Dun, 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 dun. The smoke of the pipe compels you.
Your mother smokes pipes in hell.
Brilliant. Can't believe I didn't think of that one.
It's that time of year again.
It's that time of year, it's Spooktober.
Favouriteest, spookinest time of the year.
Yeah, and we're all really excited. I've been really in the mood of the season, doing all kind of pumpkin picking.
Yeah.
The kids have been really into it, decorating the house and whatnot. So yeah, we've been enjoying it. And tonight is going to be our Spooktober stream. We're going in deep on two films. The Exorcist.
Yeah, one that everyone will know. Exorcist.
Exactly. 1973, The Exorcist, William Friedkin, adapted from William Peter Blythe's novel, and also a lesser known one, a Soviet horror film called V from 1967.
Yeah. So, first things first, what's in the bowl?
Yeah,
what we're smoking, what we're drinking.
Tradition. So I've gone with the Falcon because basically, I think I said this maybe on the last one, but I burnt my mouth for the first time in ages, and I switched to the Falcon so I could smoke while my mouth was moving. And I've just not stopped with the Falcon, so I'm smoking the Black Hunter Falcon stem with the Hunter Algiers bowl.
And that, I'm just going to say, I'm not sure if you're going to get that on camera, but the grain, I don't think I've seen that before, and the grain on it is absolutely gorgeous.
It's so lovely,
it's like
isn't it?
this swirling,
yeah,
almost like a cross cut.
Yeah.
It's very different. Normally I kind of see it with kind of
vertical. Yeah.
That's very, very different.
Lovely.
A bleak grain.
And that's the Algiers bowl, which I really like from any kind of like burley, which I am smoking. I'm smoking Cobblestone's burley plug. Now it's called burley plug, but it's not a plug like we would call a plug, which is like a really thick, dense thing that you need to cut up.
Yeah.
It's more of a crumble cake, really.
Got it.
You just crumble it with your fingers.
Yeah.
And I'm not really spoken about this. We need to sign into chat.
Sign into the chat, yeah.
I'm not really spoken about this on the podcast yet, but it's
on a browser.
Yeah, but it's basically a very easygoing kind of a burley smoke. It's dark burleys, it's dark fired. It's got the smokiness, it's got the chocolatey burliness. There's nothing popping.
In Kentucky or?
Yeah, it's Kentucky dark fired. Yeah, there's nothing like not super complex, but it's a bold smoke that's smooth and cool, and it's got the flavours that I like. So for me, I like it. Now it's a bit more expensive than the Cornell and Deal tins. Don't know why exactly. I think for the value, the Cornell and Deal Burley Flake is still my favourite.
Yeah, it's top draw.
Yeah, but this is good.
Yeah, outstanding. Well, I've gone for a similar bit. So interesting that you're talking about the Falcon. I had a bit of a mishap while I was away with work and lost my Falcon and my pouch and my tool and just about everything in my entire life. So I was kind of wounded. So it set me back a good 3 figures to replace it all, which I was really kicking myself for. So I have picked up. I'm not smoking it tonight, but I have picked up a replacement.
It's nice.
Falcon. Yeah. So it's another shillelagh stem. It's a grey and brass, so dark grey finish. For the main body, and then a brass draft pipe. Yeah. So it's a slightly different colour, but it looks very similar to the last one. But crucially, more importantly than anything, is that the old meerschaum bowl that I had, which didn't really ever seal or seat properly on the old Falcon, now on this one seats beautifully. So I've got, which was 60 quid, so it's basically it's saved me 60 quid. I mean, if I'm kind of looking at it that way, that's thick boy maths, right? I'm not down 120 quid. I'm up 60 quid. But I've got my bowl back, which is amazing. So I've effectively got 2 meerschaum pipes, which is great. But for all that, I'm not actually smoking that tonight. I am smoking my, of course. I've got my Peterson Dracula 01. The big boy tonight. So in that, again, keeping with the tradition and the theme. So I've got some autumn evening in there. Nice, thick, heavy, jammy, but very rich and a little bit of complexity in the a bit sort of aromatic-y. It's kind of a clever aromatic or a classy aromatic.
Great. Yeah, I would say that classy aromatic. Yeah.
But it still misses a bit of something. And the bit of something is Harry and I are going through a phase of basically smoking anything that's even touched a cigar or might touch a cigar. So I've got a bit of cigar leaf left over from my trimmings of my of the ends of my David and Goliath tabernacle torpedoes.
Yeah. So
into the mix you go, head first, and in it goes, and it's just it's everything. It's a proper robust blend. It's got a bit of everything now.
Yeah, I can see that being really
it's
nice.
It's a witch's brew of a smoke.
I can see the maple and like the whiskey from the autumn evening being melding really nicely with the chocolate and the bold light espresso from the cigar leaf. I can definitely see that. Yeah.
And we've got in the bowl in the glass tonight a bit of Elijah Craig, so we're going down we're going down Rye Alley.
Which is absolutely beautiful, which Dion got for my birthday, and we drank a lot of it, as you can see, on the birthday. I haven't touched it since. But yeah, we had a few cocktails and we had some straight as well. And it was a great evening.
It was, yeah, it was good. With some ribs.
Yeah, we did some short ribs.
Yeah, short ribs.
Absolutely beautiful with the garlic palm mash.
Yeah. Some jus.
Yeah.
Some jus going on, some jus action. So yeah, it was good. It was really good.
Yeah.
So, in terms of tonight then, for tonight's fare, being that it's Halloween, why don't you talk us through The Exorcist?
Yeah, so we're going to start with The Exorcist because it's a classic. Everybody knows The Exorcist. So we kind of planned this like a couple of weeks ago, maybe just over 2 weeks ago. And as it happened, of all places, I was shopping in Sainsbury's, and in the book aisle, because the book aisle is also the coffee aisle for some reason. So I was going to get coffee, and I just saw in the book aisle The Exorcist. And Dion had mentioned that we should do The Exorcist, watch the director's cut, and talk about The Exorcist, and we agreed on that. And I thought, I'll pick up the book. I sort of like looked at the thickness of the spine, and I thought I can do this in about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I did it. I finished it the day before yesterday. So I've read the novel. We both rewatched the film recently. So just like a bit of history, there used to be like a sort of like film noir kind of series. It was called something Gunn, Peter Gunn, I want to say it was called.
Yeah.
And so that was a pretty popular TV series. Thank you, mate. They wanted to do like a feature film of it, and they asked a salute. They asked William Friedkin, who was directed The Exorcist, to direct it, and he said, "The screenplay's trash. I'm not going to do it."
Yeah.
And then a guy caught up with him, and he was like, "I agree with you. It's trash. I wrote it," and it was Bill Blatty. It was William Peter Blatty, and then they kind of formed a friendship.
Yeah.
Now, Bill Blatty would go on to read something in the local paper that happened I believe it happened in Georgetown, where he went to university and lived, that a young boy had undergone an exorcism. And he was a devout Catholic himself, devout Roman Catholic, and he decided to write this novel, which was released in 1971, called The Exorcist, and it was met with critical acclaim. People loved it, and then he would adapt it to screenplay, and he got his mate William Friedkin to direct it, and 2 years later the film would be out. Now, I've been looking into a lot of because I've just, for the last 2 weeks, I've just had my head squarely in The Exorcist, like the history of it, been watching films, reading stuff about it. It was a phenomenon at the time. Like, people would go to watch it and they'd be sick.
Yeah.
People would.
It was a big reaction, wasn't there, at the time?
Yeah.
It's easy to kind of overlook what kind of a social phenomenon it was for people to go and see it.
Definitely. I mean, I remember my mum talking about The Exorcist when I was a bit younger, and she was just like, don't watch it. I remember it made me feel ill. It was so frightening. And I've got this memory, and this shows that I watched The Exorcist when I was too young. But I went to a Catholic school, primary school and secondary school. In primary school, I would have been about year 6.
Yeah.
And it was something like the anniversary of the founding of the school, and this priest had founded the school, and my teacher was doing casting, and she was like, "Who wants to play Father so and so. And no one put their hand up, and she went, Harry's going to do this, right? So I got like a black shirt, I put the collar in, I did the play. And then I remember like, after the play, like a bunch of the peers were coming up to me and they were going, oh, you did a great job there, Harry, that was really good. And I just thought, I've got like a bunch of these adults' attention, I'm going to do something. And I started going, the power of Christ compels you. Brilliant. And I got some like nervous laughter, but I could only have been like 11 or 12. And so I must have watched it at that age, but I'd not watched it until recently. Probably been years have passed since I'd seen it. And
it's interesting because I watched it when I was younger, probably in my teens, probably 14, 15 maybe.
That's good.
Really good, Elijah Craig. So and then I kind of watched it again. They had it, often these things come back around for like Halloween. They'll put an in-theatre screening of it. Went to watch it with my dad. I thought it was really cool. But I messaged. I spoke to you about a couple of years ago, maybe now, about. Or it might have been this time last year when we were saying, let's have a look at The Exorcist for next year, because it hits different after having been brought into the Orthodox Church for a couple of reasons. First of all, that when we went through our chrismation, there are prayers of exorcism within that service.
Yeah, I mean. We've never mentioned this on podcast, but Dion and I have both undergone exorcisms about 7 years ago. There was a priest.
It's pretty wild. Smile, wine.
Yeah.
So all sorts of stuff went off. We didn't quite hear. We didn't have any pea soup at the time, but it was pretty good. But effectively, and although it's kind of almost funny, but like. It happens, exorcism in Orthodox, it happens quite regularly. It happens very regularly. In fact, if you're reading bedtime prayers, there's a prayer that you read pray over your bed, where you are effectively exorcising your bed.
And moreover, every Orthodox priest is authorised and qualified to perform exorcism.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And I said to you at the time, it slaps differently since becoming Orthodox. And one of the things for me was there was a thing in there that kind of really ground on me, which is just how many times she was taking the Lord's name in vain. And it was like little drip feed bits that would kind of and then she starts to kind of mess around with the stuff in the attic, and then she's got the Ouija board, and then things kind of deteriorate.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, and that was something that you said, you said it a while ago, and I sort of watched it with that kind of lens in my mind. So, I mean, we're assuming that people are familiar with the story, but it's about the mum and her little girl, Chris McNeil and Reagan McNeil. The mum's a famous actress. At the time of the film, she's renting this house in Georgetown because she's filming in Georgetown.
Is she divorced, or is the dad died?
Yeah, divorced. Yeah, so these are all good points. So, like you say, she's blaspheming all the time.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, this and that.
My God, that. Yeah.
So she's always doing these. Taking the Lord's name in vain, blaspheming. She's got the Ouija board, so the little girl's playing with the Ouija board, and it's not her instinct to immediately remove it.
Yeah, it's like you crack on.
Oh yeah, Ouija board.
These are great, lots of fun.
Yeah, exactly. Now the other thing, no father present. Right. What's the father a symbol for? The father's a symbol for God, obviously.
Yeah.
And that was another theme in the most recent Evil Dead, which was called Evil Dead Rise. It's about a mum and her kids. No dad.
Yeah.
The father's a protective element, right?
Mm-hmm. And what about the trade of being an actor? Is that
exactly
mummers?
Exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. So the way that we view actors now, we celebrate them. They're celebrities, but historically that has not been the case. Actors were kind of viewed as the lowest of the low.
Yeah.
And
which, when you look at Hollywood.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, things are coming out.
Just saying.
Yeah. But if you think about what an actor is doing, they are inviting in a kind of alien spirit.
Yeah.
That they embody, and
mediumistic.
Yeah. And you know what's become a major thing in films recently is you'll hear, oh, so and so did the new film. He's a method actor, like you used to hear that about like maybe Daniel Day-Lewis, and it was kind of quirky and weird. But now every actor is a method actor, like they stay in character in between shots and stuff, and that's kind of what the actors doing. They're like inviting in and channeling, right? We use that word channeling. That's like an occult kind of mediumistic word. Yeah. This kind of like spirit. So I think that you definitely. I'm just trim my moustache now. You were definitely on something about maybe the influence of the mother as a kind of vector, like an opening for this. Now,
because they go for the weak points, don't they? That's the thing.
Exactly.
Like a virus, like a bacteria, like it's an infection. It's a spiritual infection. These things, if there are openings, if there are weaknesses, they'll exploit that, and they do it with the priest, don't they?
Exactly.
The priest.
Exactly. So. Right, I think if we go back a little bit, and we'll come back to this, we forgot to talk about the opening scene. So the scene opens with, the film opens with Father Merrin in Iraq, in Mosul.
Right.
And in the book, this scene is about 4 pages long. It's not very long, but in the book, it really grounds it in biblical history. Like he's talking about. He mentions the fiery furnace that Daniel's friends were in, and he talks about Nineveh, and he's like really grounded in biblical history, and in the film itself, it fleshes it out a lot more, and so they call Father Merrin to the dig. There's an excavation going on, and he kind of like hooks out of the darkness, out of this cavern. This rubble, and in the rubble he finds the head of the demon Pazuzu.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, everyone sort of knows that the demon is Pazuzu, but it's never name dropped.
Right.
In either the film or the book.
Yeah.
But we see from the statue that it is Pazuzu.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, Pazuzu is a real deity, demonic figure from the
Mesopotamia.
Well, probably if you're from that part of the world, Assyrians, Mesopotamians, they would have known this guy. And he was associated with, he's the demon of the southwest wind.
Yeah.
He's the king of the demons of the wind. He also had a wife, Lamashtu, who would like visit sickness and illness. And he was a kind of apotropaic figure. Like, if you notice the head that he digs out, it's got a loop on the head. To be worn as an amulet or talisman.
Yeah, that's right.
In a similar way that we don't really think about it now, but the tradition of like carving a jack-o'-lantern and putting it by your door, that's like you do a scary face to scare away the spirit.
Like a gargoyle type thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Gargoyles are the same thing. You put them on the outside of the church.
Yeah.
That scares away like the seraphim and the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
Like the Varangian Guard, the Byzantine Empire. Get in trouble for some barbarians. We get our own barbarians. So he was believed that he, and it says it in the film Evil Against Evil.
Yeah.
The Arab guy says that. And then after he finds the little head, weird things start to happen. Like he sees the blacksmith with the kind of the milky eye, and he kind of looks at, and then there's like a jump scare where a woman's going by in a cart and her face is all kind of, you see it for just a second, but it's really
like contorted. Yeah.
And then it kind of goes to the old temple. I think it's Hatra, and there's a couple of dogs fighting.
That's right.
And there's like a dark dog and a light dog.
Yeah.
And then he's confronted with the statue of Pazuzu. And the last shot in the scene is kind of like Pazuzu towering over Merrin, and they're facing each other. Pazuzu's slightly elevated.
Yeah.
And something that Jonathan Peugeot says is that in any good story, the first 10 minutes, the opening scene of the film reveals the story, right?
Yeah.
And the story's revealed in that.
It's all foreshadowed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Merrin is facing Pazuzu, the light and the light and the dark dog fighting, and then the weird goings on.
Yeah.
It's all foreshadowed, so that's a great scene. So I was watching some analysis for this, and Rob Eggers. So his channel's called Collative Learning, and he's done a lot. He's done a lot of Exorcist. He's done a lot of The Shining. He's done a lot of good stuff on films. But I was watching his analysis of this scene.
I've seen The Shining one. It's very good.
I was watching his analysis of this scene, And there's a bit where Father Merrin is walking behind a bunch of Muslims that are praying.
Yeah, that's right.
And he goes, I think in this scene, the men that are prostrating, they're showing their backside to Father Merrin. And this is kind of a foreshadowing of what Pazuzu will do. I think you're reading too much.
Yeah.
I think you've.
I like it, but it's not. But you're not.
Yeah, I think you've. I think that's just they're just Muslims praying there, man. So anyway, yeah, I thought that was funny. And then obviously, so the film opens with like the first thing that you hear is the adhan, the Islamic call to prayer, and skipping to the end, that's the last thing that you hear as well.
Yeah.
So when you hear the adhan in a film, that basically means we're in the Middle East.
Yeah,
it's shorthand for we're in the Middle East.
That's right.
You hear that and you know that that's where it's set and everything. But so we could take that at face value at the start, but at the end,
why the end? Yeah,
in Georgetown, when everything is apparently hunky dory.
Yeah.
Why are we hearing that refrain?
Yeah, and if he's an entity of the wind, it's like it's going to be carried along on the wind.
Yeah.
It's like it's kind of bound up with his kind of like his kind of amorphous nature. Is that he's drifting around on the wind because you can never really kill demons. They can be exorcised, but they can't be destroyed as such.
Right.
Until only God can destroy them. Which is why they were so scared of. The Legion was so scared of Christ.
It's a good point. So I was just thinking about Legion. Even in the story, the demons go into the pigs, right? It's not like they're destroyed. They kind of go into another vector.
That's right.
Into another host.
Into the sea. Interestingly, that's kind of something that cropped up in sort of antediluvian Christology about and sort of Enochian concepts of the sea being what happened where the Nephilim and the so the proto demons were washed into, which is why in the Bible it says at the very end there'll be a new heaven and a new earth, but it doesn't mention about the sea.
That makes a ton of sense, because the sea is like the primordial chaos that everything comes out of, and going back, so we've got this actress mother and the little girl, and all of a sudden she starts to exhibit this strange behaviour, and it kind of first rears its head when she holds this little dinner party, right?
Yeah.
And she's invited some like prominent figures, like the film director's there. There's an astronaut there.
Yeah.
There's a couple of priests there. Alan Duncan's in.
Oh, he's on,
guys.
Good lad.
But thank you, bro.
Yeah,
so I think that so Duncan says that the video is better, and I think that confirms that that's a problem with my internet.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna look into that, probably swap, because to be honest, it has been rubbish.
Yeah.
So clearly, that is the problem.
Yeah.
But thank you for joining us.
Good to have you on.
Always first in.
And interesting about the thing with the actors as well is like it's kind of a little bit of kind of not debauchery, but it's kind of it's in the ballpark,
Yeah.
There's a lot of booze.
Yeah.
There's a lot of tobacco.
I know.
There's a lot of, like, this is different. It's different when we do it. Blessed. Yeah, it's different when we do it. This is David. Okay. Yeah. So there's but it's. And that kind of crops up again in a lot of Orthodox stuff. I'm thinking what struck me with it was about St. Theophan the Recluse, and the woman who starts writing St. Theophan the Recluse is she's like a socialite. She goes to loads of parties, and she has like this vision, but not a vision of like beauty and light and angels, and she sees the absurdity and the horror of like this kind of debauched lifestyle. So obviously it's it's nowhere near as sort of bad as that, but it starts off like that. There are little clues as to the lifestyle of her mum, and like the kind of the circles that she keeps, and like this very kind of open and liberal, super liberal lifestyle that she's got.
I definitely agree with that, bro. And the novel goes into that a little bit further. So there's this character Sharon, who I believe is like a kind of like secretary / housemate, and she is kind of into like quasi-Buddhism, New Age kind of stuff. So everyone, like, and there's the Ouija board. Everyone's kind of delving into a little bit of New Age, a little bit of Crowleyite kind of spirituality, but you know, kind of yoga and this and that.
All of which has all been kind of in the in St. Seraphim Rose's stuff in the Religion of the Future, and he's talking about, again, mediumistic. You're opening doors to things that you don't really understand, and the dangers, the inherent dangers of doing that.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, the first scene where something really the possession kind of really rears its head is when Reagan's little girl comes down during the dinner party.
That's right.
And she tells the astronaut, "You're going to die. Yeah, you're going to die up there."
Yeah.
And then
just on the floor, doesn't she?
Yeah, all over the carpet.
Yeah. If you've ever anybody got kids, it's all happened. we've all had it, haven't we?
And that's the thing. It's definitely a weird thing to happen, but it's not out of the bounds of what a child might do.
Right.
Especially if they were ill.
Right.
Especially if they had a fever or something.
Right.
So it's definitely spooky, definitely a little bit weird, but not out of the realm of possibility or even, you know. So then she does what a good mother does, and she excuses herself from the party, and she washes her down, and she gets her back to bed and stuff. But then she really strikes up a friendship with Father Joe Dyer, the dean's assistant. Yeah. So just like one syllable away from Jay Dyer, who's a mean misogynist. Don't watch him.
Batman.
Yeah. Domesday evening. Good evening, Domesday. I don't believe we've seen you before, brother, but thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome. Yeah. But then, yeah, things get increasingly worse, right? So they take her to see a doctor, right?
That's right.
And the doctor's having a word with her, and she's like, and the doctor's like, what about her language? What do you mean about language? She swears a lot.
Yeah.
And she's like, what do you mean swears? Be more specific. Well, to be more specific, she told me to keep my fingers away from her.
JJ.
Yeah. And that's like
don't they all say that? They all say.
I mean,
they're all this.
Every father's daughter is
they're all the same.
So that's like the first thing we hear, that she's swearing or she's acting out. And then we see scenes where the doctor's trying to examine her, and she's kind of like either being like belligerent, or she's kind of just like, kind of like distracted, kind of like my little boy actually.
Wait a minute. This is
just parenting.
This is parenting. There's nothing to do with demons. She's just a little sod.
And so what really comes up in this scene is just from like a filmmaking perspective is that Friedkin was a documentarian.
Yeah.
Prior to
that's a great show.
This.
Yeah.
And a lot of these scenes look very documentarian. Yeah. You're just seeing the doctor doing his thing and like running the MRI or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you knew this, bro, but there's like an orderly or a nurse in the background in one of the scenes who turned out to be a real life murderer.
No.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think if I remember correctly, he had committed the murder prior to the filming, and then got caught later.
No way.
Yeah. And a lot of kind of tragedies befell the cast as well. It's one of those things where
life imitating art.
Yeah, I think Max von Sydow's, I think he lost somebody close to him.
Wow.
And I think a couple of things happened, like people got injured.
Yeah.
Ellen Bernstein got injured, and Linda Blair got.
She was messed up for a long time, wasn't she?
Yeah. She got death threats apparently for making that film.
Yeah.
And so
I remember like the tests as she kind of goes through this process. It kind of talking about things like having a decline, like a descent into hell almost. It's like these tests even before it gets to the point where they realise that even it's the medical guys that say that she have you considered seeing a priest? Even before all that, all the kind of the tests kind of get more invasive and more extreme and more like painful and torturous.
That's a great point. So what I would say to that is, so we haven't spoken about Father Karras yet. Father Karras is the young priest who will eventually go on to perform the exorcism along with Father Merrin.
Yeah.
He's lost his faith. He's kind of going through his own stuff. Now,
is he a Maronite? I know he's a Jesuit, but
he's a Jesuit. Yeah.
Greek.
He is Greek.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of
a
bit left field because you would expect him to be Orthodox, but there are Greek Catholics.
Yeah.
So whenever the demon kind of manifests itself in Regan, they tend to be more extreme when the mother is around.
Yeah.
Because she's surrounded by doctors. And what the demon, I believe the reason for this is that, obviously the infamous scene with the crucifix.
Yeah.
And the manifestation of the director.
Yeah.
This happens around the mother, and I believe that's because the demon wants to invite more torturous, invasive procedures to degrade the body, the human host, and put Regan through all this horror.
Yeah.
Now
it's acting through agents.
Yeah. No, I want to speak later about how the demon acts around Father Karras.
Yeah.
But I think we should introduce Father Karras first. So he's this Greek American priest. He's a Jesuit, and he's also a trained psychiatrist.
That's right.
He joined the priesthood, and then the Society of Jesus put him through his psychiatry schooling. But at the point that we find him, he's on the brink of atheism.
He's guilt-ridden, isn't he, over his mum?
Yeah. So his mum is like, by the looks of it, a first-generation immigrant.
Yeah.
She's got the heavy accent, the broken English, and he feels really bad because he and his uncle says this to him. He had the ability to be a big shot doctor and bring in the big bucks. Yeah. But he joined the priesthood, and he didn't have the money to put his mother in a classier place.
Good care.
And neither did he have the time to really look after her. Yeah. So he's guilt-ridden that he feels he's kind of abandoned his mum. Yeah. And his mum dies around about the halfway point of the film. Right. So he's racked with guilt. He's already on the brink of atheism. And we see him saying the Mass quite often, and he's doing it in a rote fashion. There's no faith in it. No. There's no zeal, no passion. And
they kind of, I wonder if they kind of put him in with Merrin because when they go through there's a procedure to go through. I know we're jumping ahead a little bit. When there's a procedure that they have to follow to be able to authorise and sanction an exorcism, and that is they've got to be psychologically, psychiatrically tested first. But by bringing somebody in who's a qualified psychiatrist, it's there to sort of bring balance with Merrin.
Yeah.
But it doesn't kind of work. It doesn't work out that way.
And he actually mentions that the Catholic Church prescribes that a psychiatrist must be present.
That's right.
At the exorcist. So I really want to get into that because I think that is a topic where we can. There's going to be a lot of discussion, but I just want to build up to it. So Regan's gone right. What we should also mention is that the director that her mum is working with is murdered, and he's found fallen outside of Regan's bedroom window with his head completely out around. Yeah. And the force that it would require to turn this man's head completely around.
That's right. It happened before.
Yeah.
He went down the stairs and said,
exactly. Yeah. It could not have happened as a result of the fall.
Yeah.
It would be impossible for a little 12-year-old girl to do that. And then in one of the demonic manifestation scenes, Regan turns her head all the way around, and she says in the guy's voice, "Do you know what she did, your chuffing daughter?"
So stealing all the sweets out of the cupboard.
Yeah. It's an English man in an American film, so of course he's some kind of degenerate pervert. Now, what was in the book? The it makes it explicit that Father Karras is an expert in witchcraft. He's studied he knows what it's all about.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's a scene where it goes into graphic detail about what goes on at a black mass, and it's especially for a Christian to hear. It's really foul, really just disgusting.
Yeah.
What it says is that a lot of the times, these people who have channeled a demon, they end up kind of unalived by the demon, and the way that the demon does it is by owling the head. You know, so that is kind of a link there. But anyway, so Reagan's undergoing all these tests, and there's a bit where the mother, Chris, is in a boardroom with all these doctors, and they're all suited up, and it reminds me of kind of like a scene from like the Vatican, like College of Cardinals, and they're all telling her, "Look, have you considered exorcism?" And that was, I was saying to you the other day, that's really, really funny, because it's an example of how scientific materialism, naturalism, ends up in this Ouroboros kind of thing where it ends up eating itself. Because it's not sustainable on its own.
Right.
So it comes full circle to the point where, you know, you can't actually consider religion.
We're out.
And they're saying, like, you know, really the only people who do it anymore are the Catholics, and they keep it kind of in the closet. They're a little bit ashamed about it. Not 100% sure, obviously, because the Orthodox are doing it all the time. But, you know, for the purposes of the knowledge, only the Catholics are really doing it, and they're kind of a little bit embarrassed about it, but they will still do it. And so then she gets in touch with Father Karras, and he is, despite being a priest and a Jesuit, he is a complete materialist, naturalist. So she says, "Can you do an exorcism?" And he goes, "Well, we'll have to get in a time machine and go back to the 16th century."
He's no idea, has he?
Well, intellectually, he knows all about it, but
that's from like a spiritual warfare point of view.
Exactly, yeah. From like a noetic kind of principle, and the book goes into this. In the book, a huge portion of the book is devoted to this next kind of section where he tells her, "I need to collect enough evidence to present to the church, to my bishop, to authorise this exorcism." And
which, to be fair, if you've ever had anything to do with ecclesiology and anything to do with the church at all, basically the bishop has the last say on everything.
Yeah.
So that scans.
Yeah, because he's the episcopos, overseer, shepherd.
Right.
He's the guy that's in charge of that jurisdiction.
Right.
So yeah, everything has to run through him. So what the demon does now is like very manipulative, very sneaky. What it does is it drip feeds Father Karras little crumbs that maybe could be signs of exorcism. Also could be explained by something else. So there's the foreign language speaking. So she
Latin.
She speaks in Latin. Right. She's like ego te absolvo. And things like that. And so he speaks to her because it explains this in the book where he's like, there have been cases where it's been believed that somebody is possessed and they're speaking a foreign language, and that is one of the criteria that the Catholic Church will say they're speaking a foreign language they couldn't have had any knowledge of. But he says, there's been cases where it turns out that if you've been exposed to some kind of foreign language, even subliminally, it can like resurface. And so she starts speaking Latin, and he says in Latin, "What is your name?" And she goes, "Bonjour." So she's kind of toying with the demon is toying with him because it's like, bonjour, it's another foreign language, but every kid by age 12 has probably at school heard the bit of bonjour. And then she says, Le plume de ma tante from the pen of my aunt, which apparently is a common phrase that children talk when they're learning French.
Yeah.
I never heard that, but
No.
so she's toying with him because she's using little excerpts from foreign language that probably a 12-year-old really wouldn't have heard, but possibly could have in passing.
Yeah.
And in the book, she speaks a bit of German because the help in the house is German. The
Klaus.
Carl Ingstrom and his wife Willie.
That's right.
I guess that's like Wilhelmina or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's kind of like drip feeding him stuff, and like she opens a drawer and then closes it, and then he's like, do that again, and she's like, in time.
In time.
She's not going to do any overt display around the priest because she wants to torment him.
Yeah.
And keep him guessing, is this a real exorcism?
Yeah.
Or is this a real possession? Or is this psychosomatic? And he is desperate to find a reason why this isn't a real possession. He's desperate to find a naturalistic cause.
Is it because he's, that's kind of his background as a physician?
Yeah.
Is it also a little bit of, dare I say, kind of cowardice, spiritual cowardice? He doesn't really, or is it entering into a realm he doesn't really have any knowledge of? The demon's dragging him down to, what Sun Tzu says, was it the 7th battlefield? It's dragging him to a place where he doesn't want to go, and the odds are evened up a little bit.
Yeah. Most of the guys read The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli. I've been reading Sun Tzu.
Hey!
Yeah, that's a good point. But what I think that this really is speaking to on like a macro level is this novel was written and this film was made not long after Vatican II.
Yeah.
So just to give I'm not an expert on the Catholic Church, I'm not an expert on Vatican II, but what I do know is that in a bullet point kind of version, basically essentially what Vatican II did is largely liberalise the church.
Yeah.
Kind of like, the institute the Novus Ordo, so no more Tridentine Latin Mass.
Yeah.
And also just kind of updating. That's not the right word.
It was a modernisation.
Modernising is the word. Yeah. Modernising the
for
theology.
The modern audience.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Redone for a modern audience.
Yeah.
And what I think that Father Karras embodies the Vatican II ideology, and then in steps Father Marian towards the end, and he is lowercase o. He's orthodox.
Yeah.
He's he doesn't even for a second entertain any psychosomatic BS.
No.
So we might be skipping ahead a bit, but when he shows up at the house and produces Mary, Mary,
yeah, that's right.
Karras is like, do you want to know the background of the case? And he's like, why?
Pointless.
Yeah, pointless.
Yeah.
There's a demon in there, and we're going to go in there and we're going to exorcise the demon. I don't need to hear about it. It's not
nothing new under the sun.
Exactly.
And it's funny for a priest because that's often what a priest will say, especially at confession. All the sort of treatises on confession is like, look, you can confess whatever you like, and it's going to be like the worst thing that you've ever committed. To me, I've heard it a million times already. There's nothing new. In thousands of years of ecclesiology and theology, this thing has been around, and it speaks a little bit to that. Whether it's Pazuzu or not Pazuzu, he doesn't know necessarily at that point. Maybe he suspects, but doesn't know. But it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The point is, he's about to undertake an act of spiritual warfare.
Yeah, it's immaterial.
Yeah.
Like he wants to. Even by this point, Karras wants to treat it like a psychiatric case. It's not a psychiatric case. And do you know what? Just like on a bit of a macro kind of thing again, I've been doing a lot of reading about this. I've been going into forums and whatnot. People are going like, yeah, the film is it's a metaphor for abuse, it's a metaphor for addiction. I'm like, you've seen the film and you're still not getting it. It's a straightforward case. This is a demonic possession.
Yeah. It's not going to be treated with medicine. We've tried all that. Even the medical guys were like, look, it's not going to happen.
Like, you're Father Karras. That's what you are. You're Father Karras.
Right, you're Father Karras. Yes. Yeah.
Now, this. So I've been thinking about this. Who is the exorcist?
Ultimately, Christ.
Right, but in the subject, in the context of the film.
So it's
There's two candidates.
It's effectively Merrin to begin with, isn't it? And then it becomes when, not to kind of get ahead of ourselves, but that it's like the baton's almost kind of passed halfway through, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was like a rediscovery, if you like, of Karras's faith through Rubric, through the service.
Yeah, exactly. I think I would agree with that. So like, there's the iconic.
Oh, I've got Phoenician in.
The Phoenician checking in.
Listen up, brother. This concerns you demonic entity. It's this guy's Fulgrim.
Welcome, brother. So... Damn, what were we saying? So I agree with that. I agree with that assessment. I think that initially The Exorcist, it is Father Merrin, but he does pass the torch probably in the last 10 minutes, last 10-15 minutes of the film. I think what's great, and let's talk about the third act in a minute. I think what's great about this film is that, and what really jumped out to me when I rewatched the film recently, and when I was reading the book, is that any scenes with the demon, they're actually few and far between.
Yeah.
To say that the film is called The Exorcist.
Yeah.
And both. So it's largely kind of a human drama.
Yeah.
And I think the main arc definitely is Father Karras regaining his faith.
Yeah.
At great cost.
It's the redemption story.
Yeah. And ultimately, it's kind of a Christ kind of story at the end, like a sacrificial thing. In a more minor sense, I think it's also to do with the mother losing someone dear to her, and she's powerless to do anything about it. And we feel for the mother. Reagan, we don't actually get a lot of Reagan.
Wow.
But like I said, it's largely
she's virtually a passenger in the story.
Exactly.
By the time the actor's already, by the time it's clear that she's under possession, she as a character kind of ceases to exist.
Yeah.
For the film.
Yeah, definitely. It's largely about Father Karras, and I just think, and I thought when I was reading the book and when I was watching the film, this story is expertly paced.
Oh yeah.
Expertly.
Yeah.
So
in a good sense, a traditional 3-act film.
Yeah.
You know, a concept, a development, and a payoff.
And every second is, it's just expertly paced. So it's like there are a lot of I thought that a theme, and it's reflected in the way that it's shot, is distance.
Yeah.
So there's one big thing where Father Karras dreams about his mother, and he's running towards his mother, and no matter how fast he runs, she's always the same distance away.
Yeah, that's right.
And she eventually goes
down the street.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She goes down the subway in the end. Chris is becoming more distant from her daughter. Karras is distant from his faith.
Yeah.
And I think that's reflected in the way that the film's shot. There are a lot of long shots, just people walking.
Yeah.
Nuns walking, priests walking through these like big hallways and courtyards and stuff. But the way that the film's paced, we're kind of drip fed the juicy bits, the memorable scenes, the crucifix scene, the vomit scene, the head scene.
Yeah.
And we feel that these are real payoffs because we spent a lot of time in the human drama kind of, but the human drama bit itself was equally rewarding.
Yeah.
Because we're seeing Father Karras wrestle with his faith and wrestle with his doubt and.
Yeah. It reminded me a little bit in terms of the pacing of another sort of quality. Okay, a little bit later, so maybe a few years later down the line, but the Alien film, again, very similar in terms of its pacing.
Yeah.
There are redemption arcs. Again, there are kind of it's not necessarily a demon, but it's, you know, if you're any kind of 40k fans in, and I know there are, so that it's this kind of thing about the Xenos, that it's an other. This other thing that's come from another place that's completely alien and different and to us.
Yeah.
And again, you virtually don't see it. It's in virtually maybe a handful of scenes.
And again, in that film, especially in the beginning, a lot of shots of emptiness.
Right.
Kind of like very still shots, not a lot going on, empty hallways.
That's right.
Space.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a bit where, you know, like they're analysing. I think maybe they're replaying what she said backwards. They find out or it's something that she said very lightly, but the demons are kind of like talking to each other, and they're like, they call her the piglet or the sow. Don't they?
That's
like,
right.
We want to stay in the sow. It's better than the void.
Yeah.
So like this idea that the demons are like in this emptiness. And pigs. And
unclean animal.
Yeah, and you know, in the novel, before they undertake the exorcism, they actually read the story of the Gadarene.
Yeah.
They don't do that in the film.
Yeah.
But they actually read the story of Jesus exorcising Legion into the pigs.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, there's a channel called Harmony.
Right? Oh, it's great.
And he just as an aside, and he animates just these kind of like anime edits of like little Bible passages. And my kids are obsessed with the Gadarene one. And like oftentimes we'll be laying in bed.
Show me the pigs one.
Yeah,
show me the pigs one.
And they're like, I want to see when the pigs run over the hedge. Because they've not worked out hedge and edge yet. So it's really funny. So it's really cute. But so the Phoenician says, I've never actually seen The Exorcist, to my shame. Morgoth did a great analysis of it. I haven't seen that.
Oh, did he really? Oh, but that's good.
I haven't seen that. But we will check that because
big fans of the goth.
Yeah, we like Morgoth.
Yeah, he's a good lad.
And the Ark of Horror, generally a year or two back. I should watch it. Yeah, you should definitely watch it, bro. Yeah. It's a great film. It's a classic, really. And
demonic spawn of Slanesh would definitely enjoy it.
And it's really unique in the sense that it both kind of created and perfected a genre.
Yeah.
As it was released.
Yeah.
Every you can see its influence on a ton of films that have come out since.
I think critically wise as well, they were really into it. I know Mark Kermode is his favourite film, full stop. Not his favourite horror film, his favourite film.
Yeah.
So like, again, it's to do with the craft of making a film and the stories and the redemption arc and the pacing and the shots and technically from a technical filmmaking perspective. It's his favourite film.
It's excellent.
Why? Yeah.
Should we get into the third act?
Yeah. So we've kind of set it up. So Merrin's now he's brought in. He's seen her. This is a demon. We're going to war. He goes in and sees her, and then what happens?
Yeah. So the third act kind of begins when Merrin is just kind of walking through this forest, and this priest hands him a letter. And it says in the book that he didn't even read the letter because he knew what it was.
Yeah.
And he shows up, and we get the iconic, excellent shot that is on the poster, and it's the street is enveloped in mist, and there's a light coming from the house.
Yeah.
And he is like the one figure in the light, and he's got the hat, he's got the briefcase, he's got the long coat, the drip, he's looking slick. And it's Max von Sydow, obviously.
See, after that, I kind of get like soldier vibes. It's like he's kitted out, like he's got his tools, got his weapons.
Absolutely, yeah.
Got his body armor. He's vested.
Yeah,
partly vested.
It's like the scene in action films. It's like it's kind of quite a common scene where it's like very quickly edited where the guy is getting ready for a thing and he's like putting on the holster, he's putting the guns, he's like checking the guns and the knife.
The armor of Christ.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Yeah, putting on the armor of Christ. And then, so he's invited into the house, and like I said, as soon as he comes in, you hear from upstairs, Merrin! Because he's met this demon before.
Yeah.
And he goes into it very briefly, very cursorily, that he exorcised this demon from a child in Africa some years ago.
And interesting that you don't really get a lot of background. Again, it's all just kind of nods and winks and suggestions in the film about Merrin's past, but you just kind of get the sense that he's seen not just this one before. This is what it is. This is what it is that he does. This is who he is.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. He's seen it before, and something that we should know is, and I kind of forgot to mention it, that in the opening scene when he's in Iraq, he's drinking tea, and he's taking medication.
Yeah.
So we know that he's on medication, and it's hinted at in the film. It's gone into more detail in the book that he's quite aware that this is going to be his last fight.
Yeah.
So when he shows up, he's kind of aware that this is going to be his last dance. Yeah. So he's kind of getting ready, and there's this nice little exchange where she's like, Chris is like, "You want brandy in your coffee?" Father's like, "Well, the doctors say I shouldn't, but,
but like
my will is weak."
But like any good Christian boy.
Exactly, yeah. And I think probably that is another hint to the fact that he knows that he's not going to be around much longer.
Yeah.
And then so there's that little exchange where they're tooling up. He's putting on the skull.
Yeah.
They're putting on the cassocks and whatnot, and Father Karras is like, "Do you want to know the case history?" And he's like, "Why?"
No. Yeah.
And then Karras is like, from what I've observed, I believe there's at least 3 identities in there, and he goes, "There's only one."
Yeah.
He's been messing with you, bro.
Yeah.
He's been messing with you.
Yeah.
And then they step in there. Oh, and he tells him, "Look, you cannot listen to what the demon says. So the demon is gonna lie through his teeth to you, but he's gonna mix in bits of truth, and that is for the purpose of, hooking you in, basically." And so he doesn't do it in the. I hate being this guy that's like, in the book. I hate being that guy. But just
this is the guy you got to be.
Yeah.
So this is what it is.
But just to compare it, in the book, in the film, the main attack that the demon launches is on Father Karras.
Yeah.
And he's like, he's doing his
weak.
mother. Yeah. He's doing his mother's voice.
It's the weak link.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in the book, the demon goes after Marion as well, and he accuses Marion of pride, and he's like, "Oh, the second son of God, Marion, why don't you bend over and fart incense and all this and that?" Yeah. He's like, and he's accusing Marion of like being this prideful figure who's elevated himself to the level of the saints and stuff.
Which again, like you listen to the stories of the lives of the saints, that you hear that a lot.
Yeah,
they go after those kinds of things.
Exactly.
Pride being the worst of it.
Yeah, because I've got to, obviously I'm not any kind of ascetic or monk or anything, but I've got to imagine that there's probably a point where you get to where you start to wonder, like, maybe pride gets mixed in.
I made it.
Yeah. Or worrying that you're going to fall into the thought that you've made it.
Yeah.
I mean, you read about Saint Joseph the Hesychast, and he dealt with all that, the demons showing up.
Yeah. It's in John on the Ladder as well. You see the icon of all the hierarchs who are falling off. So the people who are really high up,
exactly,
who've nearly made it. They're the ones being, not just in some icons, you can see they're not just falling off, but they've been like hooked off, they've been yanked down.
Yeah, the demons are pulling them down. Yeah, sure.
So they're in the bedroom, and it's going down. It's going down.
And what you first notice is that it's ice cold.
Yeah.
And apparently Friedkin had he had machines brought in that I think they were meat chillers, meat locker chillers or something. And Linda Blair was saying how she had a nightgown on and some long johns underneath, and she was absolutely freezing. And they were decked out in cassocks. But what that struck me is that, so in our theology we have the essence energies distinction, whereby we say we cannot ever know God's essence because it's ineffable, inconceivable, and all this. Yeah. But we can know God by the ousia, exactly, the nature, the essence. But we can know God by the energeia, the energies. So the energies are any positive kind of attribute that we can associate with God, like love, wisdom, justice. So heat would be an energy, and the deprivation of the heat, the deprivation of the energy,
it's like the absence of.
Exactly, the cold. The cold doesn't have any kind of positive ontological existence like the heat would. It's simply a deprivation of the heat. Yeah. So it's kind of like that room has been removed from the energeia. It is kind of like a microcosm of the void.
Yeah. And again, like so just while I'll put some more sticks to that.
Yeah.
But the other thing as well, just kind of onto that, and interesting about the heat, but also the light. You know, you see how like gloomy and dark this room becomes. You know, it's noticeably. Because the house itself, I remember, as being quite sort of cozy and kind of, quite homely. The place is quite, it's quite coming. It's a big place, but it's not this sort of sparse castle, grim type of place.
No.
It's quite a homely place.
Yeah.
But a room is like, I remember an experience that you and I had going out into Sheffield, and it's got that kind of feel of being 1 foot in another realm. Does this room? In a place where it's creating an atmosphere where it feels more comfortable.
Bro, yeah. There's like... It's hard to describe, but there's like a change in the quality of the environment.
Yeah.
I know that doesn't sound like...
But done with the lighting. I mean, it's amazingly well shot. That freaking kind of created this space where the minute they go into this bedroom, like they realise that this is a dark place, where spiritually dark.
And by this point, we can see the full effects bodily.
Yeah.
The demon is having on Regan. The skin is green, cracked, cut. By this point, she's restrained.
Yeah.
Smoke break.
Yeah.
And yeah, so and again, what really struck me is that the exorcism itself, not that long.
No.
I remembered it being a lot longer, but it's really not.
No, it's not the last sort of throws, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like the rest of the film is really kind of to set up, in much the kind of same way that, like in a service, in a long service, thinking like something like a liturgy or a mass. There's an awful lot of work that has to happen before that. There's a lot of sort of set up and build up.
Yeah.
There's a lot of preparation that's involved. This is exactly so. The act, the work itself, like Leos Tergos, the work of the people, is that that only happens once all of that sort of prep work has been done in order and using proper doctrine, rubric.
Yeah, and to that point, he's got the Roman ritual.
Yeah.
He's doing everything to the T. He's got no doubt that there's a demon in there, and he's got to do what he's got to do. And there's a bit in the director's cut where they take a break.
That's right.
And
he has a bit of a freak out, and he really gets to him.
Yeah, the demon gets to him through his mother, and he's like, you've got to get out.
And he starts reacting and speaking back to it, which is something they say you never do, never speak directly to it.
Exactly, because that it will get you. But they're on the stairs. They're kind of sat on the stairs taking 5, and Karis is like, why?
Yeah.
Why her? Why the little girl?
Yeah.
And he's like, Father Mary's like, I think it's to make us despair.
Yeah.
And that's bang on. I think like a lot of the horror that horror in general, but particularly this film, what it works on is category violation.
Yeah.
Like
body horror.
Yeah, exactly. So like things are mixing that shouldn't mix, like sweet little girl and demon shouldn't be mixing.
Yeah.
Holy imagery and iconography and disgusting language and
profanity.
Like the desecration of the statues.
Yeah.
Which, if you look closely, you can see that Reagan's art supplies have done it.
Yeah.
She's done it with the art supplies.
Yeah.
And actually, when she makes the statue of the bird, it looks a lot like this Pazuzu statue.
It does. Yeah. Great shout.
Peeing in the carpet in a fancy dinner party. Yeah. Those things don't mix.
Back to bed.
Yeah, exactly. So it's about category violation, and the word monster itself is like from a Latin meaning like warning.
Yeah.
And what monsters do, from like a kind of like psychological view, is they warn us about violation of the categories.
Yeah.
So like Pazuzu himself is this kind of like, he's got a snake for a Johnson. He's got like a leopard's head and wings and a human's body. He's a mixture of amalgamation of categories that shouldn't go together, but they are.
Yeah.
And what they do is they tell us what the category should be.
Yeah.
That's why it's a monster.
Yeah. Because you know it's wrong.
Yeah.
Instinctively know it's wrong.
And in fact, I don't know if I'm making this up or I read this somewhere, but the word demonstrate is etymologically related to monster. So like if you're confronted with something that's kind of like a blur to you, like psychologically, and you demonstrate it.
Oh, interesting.
So
I wondered if it was kind of like a thing with demons. Like demons, obviously in the Greek traditions, about an imparter of knowledge.
Exactly. So.
But what kind of knowledge?
Exactly. Well, in the book, it goes into this where she's like, a demon is Greek for like a wise one.
Yeah.
So Socrates was said to have a demon.
Yeah.
But if you read it sounds like it's his consciousness.
Yeah.
It's kind of like had this voice in his head that whenever he's about to do something, a voice would say, "Don't do that," and you would always listen to it.
Yeah.
And basically, so it sounded like basically it was his consciousness, but and it's like spelled daemon.
That's right.
Like
that's
D-A-E-M-O-N.
Yeah, that's it.
But I think we've, particularly in like in Christianity, we've used that word and we've made it.
It was a way to distinguish, wasn't it, between the
like a malevolent.
Well, interesting that you mentioned about the duality in the word, because it's the same with angel. Like angels, we kind of imagine as being like the beings of God, and obviously they were the beings of God. All have been the beings of God, but that there are fallen angels, and even in the Bible and in Scripture, and especially in other sort of apocryphal writings, thinking about Enoch, when they don't necessarily describe them as demons. In fact, they're proto-demons, and before they become demons, but that the angels have fallen. And you often hear, even in sort of more modern parlance, that Satan and his angels.
Exactly, yeah.
Not his demons necessarily, but Satan and his angels, but them having been fallen. So this kind of duality.
Good point. And just on the side, angel obviously means messenger, right?
Yeah.
And that's why we have the Evangelion, the Ev being good, and the angel message, the good news.
Good news.
And we do, and just on a completely unrelated topic, but I'm just going to shoehorn this in. We do hear in the Old Testament about the angel of the Lord, who is like a son of man, and Yahweh is giving him his name.
Yeah,
it's obviously Jesus. Yeah. So don't tell me that the Trinity isn't in the Old Testament.
Yeah, that's it. Hidden in the Old Testament and revealed in the New. Yeah, exactly right.
And anyway, so they go back in. Actually, so Father Merrin tells Father Karras to take a break, and when Father Karras comes back in, Father Merrin's dead, and it's. He succumbed to his heart thing.
Yeah.
He had a coronary thing. It's kind of like mentioned explicitly. And now Father Karras is at this, tipping point, and he's like,
what are you gonna do?
Yeah, and so he becomes like the swine. In the story, and he taunts I can't remember if he says this in the film, but he taunts. He's like, so you like to. You tough around little girls. Like, what about a big boy?
Yeah.
Come into me. And then so the demon Pazuzu jumps into him, and there's a second where the demon almost convinces him to kill the little girl.
Yeah.
But he's got the strength of will to sacrifice himself.
Yeah.
And put an end to it.
Yeah.
And so there's a bit where Father Joe Dyer, he finds him.
Right.
And he says, "Do you want to make your confession?" And if you're watching the film, he's giving him the benediction, and his hand is like...
Yeah.
And so the story behind that is that Friedkin was like, "This is not believable." And he's like, "What do you want to do?" And he's just bang! Friedkin slaps him around the face, and he's like, "Do it again." So he's just been like slapped around the face. So apparently... listening to the way that Friedkin directed this, it really reminded me of Kubrick.
Yeah.
And Kubrick actually turned it down.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he turned it down to direct it because he only directs his own screenplays.
No way. Interesting.
Yeah. And then Reagan's free of the demon, and we assume that the demon's gone back to the void. And then it kind of ends quite nicely. Regan kisses the Father Joe. She kind of looks at the Roman collar, and she's not got any memory of the possession itself, but something in her mind kind of recognizes the Roman collar, and she gives him a little kiss on the cheek. And he gives her the medallion of Saint Joseph.
That's right.
That Father Merrin found at the beginning. and it ends on a good note. But the film itself ends with the last thing you hear again is the adhan that you heard in the first. So it really stuck with me. Like, what is that meant to mean?
Yeah.
It's like it's taking us back to the beginning. Like, is it going to happen again?
Yeah.
Are we being told that this cycle is going to happen again?
Yeah. Well, effectively, it has to, doesn't it? Because it's not the end of the story for Pazuzu, because that thing will go into somebody else or go into something else. That the battle doesn't end there.
No.
But it could have chosen any kind of music. Why particularly to use that adhan?
Yeah.
What was the function of that? And it did kind of slap, not to kind of go too far down a rabbit hole, but it did slap different after the Sam Shamoon video about Baal and the relationship between the Middle Eastern religions.
Yeah, Kubal.
And the relationship between that and the Mesopotamian and the demonic entities at the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't think that was an accident. I don't think William Friedkin strikes me as a guy that does things by accident.
No, meticulous guy. Yeah, like Kubrick. A lot like Kubrick. Yeah. So,
just I mean, from a filmmaking perspective, outstanding. Anybody that hasn't watched it, get it, and get the director's cut. The Blu-ray I've got, it's got both cuts on, and they both stand up in their own right. Even the theatrical cut is outstanding.
Mm. Does the theatrical cut cut the spider walk?
It cuts a bit of it, I think. Yeah.
Mm.
Although I'm sure I've seen that in other, not necessarily a theatrical cut, but I think I saw it in the online. It was either one I'd seen on TV or it was one that I'd seen in the theatre when they brought it back on. So it could have been that they put the director's cut on. Mm. But there are bits of it that were cut out where she's sort of walking on the ceiling down the stairs, and that was cut from the theatrical one. I think I'll have to check that. So dialing back 4 years. Similar kind of concept.
Yeah.
The other side of the Iron Curtain. So, the film V.
Yeah.
Soviet era.
Yeah.
Story by Nikolai Gogol, who's like legendary storyteller, who'd written the screenplay and was sort of heavily. It was very faithfully told from the written the story, I should say. It was very, very faithfully told from the original Gogol story. Seminarians in modern day Ukraine, then obviously the Soviet Union, and before that Tsarist Russia.
Would it be Kiev and Rus at the time?
Kiev and Rus. So it was the administrative capital of the state of the nation.
Is it still the seat of power at this point?
It was the seat of power, but not necessarily the seat of the church. It's always been Moscow.
Right.
Was where the seat of the where the patriarch sat, and obviously before that and during in between was the Tsars. But it shows you the group of seminarians, and God bless them, they've got, so this, obviously it's all really concerned about orthodoxy. I can't begin to tell you how accurately they play the grumpy.
They call him the rector, don't they?
The rector, yeah.
Well, I guess he's the archimandrite.
Archimandrite, yeah.
So just before we go into it, like, how do you feel that it dealt with the church and orthodoxy in terms of how much respect or reverence it paid it?
I thought broadly it was pretty good. Generally speaking, I thought it was pretty good. I think if anything, it was a warning to people about, like, don't goof around with this stuff. Either you're all, it's a very Russian thing to, either you're all in or you're not. Don't mess about with it. Don't half-arse it. Either you're doing what you should be doing, which is, doing saying proper prayers. And again, it states that at the very outset, because the first thing the rector does, the archimandrite, is he lines them all up just as they're about to take a break, and then basically calls out, says, "You got a deacon drunk, right? You guys got a drink," and they all start laughing. They're like, "No, it's not funny. You can't be doing that." And then, like, as soon as they leave the monastery, they all go out into the market and go and grab a load of food that's on the table that's been given for them. One of them grabs a woman. We've all done it.
Exactly.
And it kind of shows this sort of carnality around them that they've kind of been.
The young lads.
They're young lads. They're effectively the young lads, and they've been goofing around. So this young guy who is named as Hamar.
Yeah, pan philosopher.
Hamar Brut. And for that, again, interesting. They call him the philosopher. I wonder if that's kind of a bit ironically, but again, it speaks to his kind of materialist nature. That he's not particularly. We hear it all the time. Like, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. This is kind of the opposite. It's like he's part of a religious order, but he's not particularly spiritual, or they don't show him in a particularly spiritual light. They don't see him with, in his cell with prayers and with books and with and praying. They don't show him prostrating or fasting. Although he does mention a couple of times, he said, "Oh, I can't do that because of the fast." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, go on then."
But then again, we don't see him doing a lot of philosophy. I wondered, in Russian, is philosopher kind of cognate with
a slight
theologian?
Yeah, maybe, but
or are we supposed to think that he's a philosopher rather than a theologian?
I think it was more the latter than the former for me, at least. Anyway, is how I read into it. And also, I kind of got like Homer and Brutus.
Yeah.
So that they were kind of leaning back on sort of like Western. Lowercase w Western philosophers, that this guy wasn't really. He was kind of, he was at it, but he wasn't really fully into it.
Obviously, Brutus is famously a traitor as well.
Right. Sticking a knife into to Brute, and so they've all had a bit to drink. They've all had a bit of a giggle. When they say the road's over there, when they say road, it's like a cart track, right? But they kind of lose their way, and they stumble upon a village. It's going dark, and
so I'm going to grab my back.
Sure, yeah, go for it. So they end up going into the into this little village, and in the village there's an old woman, a babka, and the first thing that I got when I saw her was like Baba Yaga.
Yeah.
It's just like the Baba Yaga thing, even with the broom, which we'll come on to in a sec. But this old woman, they start to kind of like they rag on her a little bit, don't they? They kind of break her balls a little bit about being an ugly old warty old woman.
It's played by a man.
It is played by a man. Yeah, good shout. Pretty well, I'm gonna say it. Knowing a few babushkas, he plays them pretty well because they are quite fearsome things. They certainly can be in church, and. So they're ragging on her. She calls the first guy lanky. You can sleep in the house. Another guy said, "Oh, you can sleep in the barn." And then to the she doesn't call him the philosopher. She can't remember what she calls him now.
She demands that they sleep in separate rooms and
to split them away. Yeah.
So what I thought was interesting about that is they move from the. Kind of like the patriarchal order of the church, into the kind of spooky,
into the wilds,
It's
the law of the law of the wilds.
And the reason I'm off camera, guys, is because I put my backy tins in my bag, and I found that the lid has fallen off in transit. So probably I've got like a bag full of backy. So production's just going downhill, guys. So stop watching.
Feel free to unsubscribe. No, don't. Please don't unsubscribe. But effectively, she demands that the philosopher, that Hamar, sleeps separately. They all sleep separately, and then she comes to him at night time. And kind of it's kind of a bit weird, and she's kind of a bit lascivious, and she's kind of giving him the eyes, and interesting, kind of reading on some of the reviews on this, it's like, is she giving him the kind of like the come to bed eyes? Is it kind of deeper than that? Is she kind of seeing through that, and she's challenging him, sort of carnally. And this is already a kind of quite a carnal guy, but she's trying him even within that, even within the confines of that, she's challenging him. And then she climbs on his back.
Yeah.
And climbs on his back and then starts flying. And this is the thing when I thought, oh, Baba Yaga, definitely. And so Baba Yaga is like for those who don't know, is like a Russian mythical old woman, sort of a demonic kind of witch type woman. But not to go as far as to say necessarily malevolent, although she's often portrayed malevolently. But then there are kind of times when people go to her for advice for things or for help with things. You know, this pagan thing.
And didn't she live like in the swamp?
In the swamp,
in a hut that's
in
like
a hut on chicken legs.
Chicken legs, yeah.
Because surrounded by a fence which is fitted with skulls, and the skulls turn and warn her when people who shouldn't be there.
But didn't she famously, rather than a broom, fly on a pestle?
Mortar and pestle, correct. So the book has a broom behind her to kind of sweep away her tracks. So they definitely kind of call on that. And this guy's kind of, he realises halfway through, I mean, clearly he's obviously had a bit to drink, because it takes him until after they've been flying over this lake to realise, is she a witch?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, she's a witch. So then he realises she's a witch and starts berating her, and then starts trying to bring in Christian. He tries to command her in the name of Christ.
Yeah, so he invokes the name of Christ, but also the Apostle Thomas. Specifically, and I wondered why specifically the Apostle Thomas.
Don't know. I wondered if it was to do with the initially I wondered whether it was to do with the that was the monastic order that they were part of, whether he was the patron, whether that was his chalice name. I don't know ultimately. And then I wondered, well, is it a doubt about doubt? Obviously, no. Doubting Thomas, we don't actually describe him as Doubting Thomas in Orthodoxy. He's described as Thomas being late. He's late all the time. But that he won't believe until he feels. So there's a materialist aspect to him. So I wonder if that's kind of sort of leans into that a little bit. But anyway,
he's a Father Karras.
He's Father Karras, but unlike Father Karras, well, maybe a little bit like Father Karras, he basically billy clubs this witch to death, pretty much. And then when she dies...
So in the film, it looks like he gives her like a light birch twig beating that you would expect from any like Russian banyan.
It's like, she's made his tea wrong.
Yeah.
Like, you know, he's got home from work and the tea's not on the table, so he's giving her a bit of a lashing. But like, clearly, like, he's a big guy.
We're supposed to believe that he beats her to death.
He beats her to death. He clubs her to death, and she's laying in the ground, dying. Before she gets unalived, she turns into this young girl, this beautiful young girl. Hi, Sam.
Oh, Sam's in.
Yeah, good lad.
Evening, lads. What are you smoking on? I have just packed a bowl of Burley Flake number 1, which is currently all over the bottom of my bag, which I'm actually gutted about. I'm holding in tears. I'm holding it in for the stream. But I was smoking some Cobblestone Burley. What have you got?
I'm still going through my my big chunk of autumn evening, C&D autumn evening, with a little twist of some cigar leaf in there. So she turns into this. This witch turns into this. What they could describe as panochka, which was not a word that I speak a little bit of Russian. Though it's not a word that I was familiar with.
Like miss.
Kinda, yeah. It's like kind of like the village maiden, if you like. Yeah, like a young girl. Beautiful, absolutely gorgeous though.
She was a knockout. I didn't catch the extras.
Bro, she honestly, she's a 7 out there. I'm not kidding. I'll have to be careful because but she's like a 6 or 7. But for us it's like 8 or 9, and she.
I thought the costume of the witch was amazing as well.
So good.
And like the little circle that she's wearing.
Yeah.
And if you ever played this film actually reminded me a lot of The Witcher 3.
Yeah.
Which is not surprising because it's based on the Slavic folklore and everything. But she reminded me of a noon wraith from the game. Kind of like white kind of gown, flower kind of circlet diadem kind of thing.
Yeah.
I thought the costume was great.
Traditionally, bang on the money.
Yeah.
For sort of traditional Slavic costume, and
Are we polishing this off?
yeah, let's. And so she, so that's kind of it. And then they end up going back because they told her you've got to come back by the feast of the nativity of the Theotokos. So they're back for the feast. When he gets back, the archimandrite, the abbot, says to him, something's gone off out in one of the nearby villages just outside of Kiev, and you've been summoned to go and read prayers over the body of a young panochka who reposed. And
I think she's dying at this point, but not dead.
That's right.
And he threatens to beat him in public. if he doesn't do it.
Typical monk.
Yeah.
Typical, because he's like, oh, no. But he's not having any of it. He tells him basically, do it on thrashing. Yeah, he threatens him with getting the birch. Bring back the birch, little swine. So he goes and he goes and he's when he gets there, the head of this village, don't know I can't remember what the Russian name for it is, but effectively he's like the alderman.
Yeah, he's a rich merchant.
He's a rich merchant, or like yeoman, I suppose would be the right word. For sort of Middle Ages England, he was a yeoman of the village.
Like a kulak, or
kinda. But without the kind of the sort of the later Soviet connotations. But though that's probably a good reason why they didn't use that word. I don't remember.
In Latvian, there's a word mujik, which is like a rich peasant who's kind of worked hard and gained a bit of material wealth.
Self-made man.
Yeah.
So he basically says to him all, you need to come and read. You need to come and pray. So read and pray are the two words that we kind of use interchangeably, but I think specifically for this, I'll come on to that. I think there's a distinction, and they really nail down into this distinction between reading prayers and praying. And he says to them, you need to pray. He uses the word molitsa. You need to pray over this young girl. And if you do it, I'll give you some money, and I want you to do it for 3 nights. So traditionally in Orthodoxy, just as an aside, when somebody reposes, the tradition is to, even now, so obviously things don't change in the Orthodox Church, so even now, when somebody reposes, the tradition is to read the entire Psalter over the body. That's the earliest opportunity, and you read it from Psalm 1 to Psalm 150. You read the whole thing, right, all the way through. All kathismas, all 16 kathismas, and 20 kathismas. And he goes and he does it. He's not particularly happy about it. And you see him eating a lot and drinking a lot, and he's kind of saying, oh well, it's the fast, so I shouldn't be, but it's hospitality, so I'm just going to eat it and drink it. And he goes into this church where this young girl, the body of this young girl is within this church. And at that point, that kind of brings us into sort of the second act. So what happens next?
So the first thing that he wants to do is he wants to light all the candles, right?
Right.
Because it'd be just like daylight. We light all the candles, and we're getting these shots of particularly Saint John the Baptist,
right,
looking really stern.
Yeah.
Close-ups on his eyes, looking really stern. Obviously, he's a stern figure because he's.
And John is what? John is
the forerunner.
And he's an ascetic.
Yeah.
He's the first monastic, if you want to describe him as such.
And just calling everyone to repentance.
Right. So John, his feast day is one of the few feast days where you fast. You fast on the feast of John the Baptist. And this imagery, and you see it sometimes, and especially in iconography, you'll see images in the iconography, and you think, oh, they look stern. They don't look pleasant to look at. They look, and often it's described as a reflection that they are dispassionate. Yeah. They're dispassionate. So it's you're reading into it. Yeah. Your understanding. So I looked at that as thinking, he's seen the rector, he's seen the archimandrite, who's bawling him out for being a goof off.
Yeah. I had the exact same thought, because I remember when we were getting catechized, our priest, who was a deacon at that time, I asked him this question, I was like, how come they all look so stern all the time? And he was like, well, he said, one, they're supposed to be dispassionate. They're not. The Byzantine style of iconography is not supposed to evoke any kind of, passion or anything, and that's why it's drawn like that.
Yeah.
He said, however, they do tend to reflect your inner state. Yeah. So,
and I got that straight away with the way that Kamal was feeling. He realised that he's acting. He's playing the part, but he's not really doing it, and he knows it. That he's kind of goofed off, and he's got to this point by, I don't know, luck, providence.
Yeah.
He's been supported, and then now Christ has then put him into a situation, or he's found himself in a situation for Christ where he's effectively got to be the priest.
Yeah, exactly. And then before he starts, like any Orthodox Christian, he says that he wishes he could smoke in the house of the Lord. I can relate.
Yeah.
Very often, I've been in church. God, I'd love to. Like,
there's a reason why the church warden's so long.
Yeah,
So you can
exactly.
stick it out the door.
And then, so he can't smoke. He gets out the snuff. Good tobacco. Good,
How
fine
much you
tobacco. Excellent
How
tobacco.
much your tobacco?
Which I thought was great.
It was.
And then, what I noticed, there's a lot of animals
Yeah.
that are involved. There's cats that run out of the church, birds that come out of the prayer book.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he's clearly postponing, he's clearly procrastinating what he needs to do. But when he starts to read, you see in the background the witch sit up. Yeah.
And he's reading, so interestingly, he's reading the Psalms. Reading, not praying. So the Psalm is what? The Psalm is a prayer book.
Yeah.
And he's reading, he's just basically reading through, and they're the Psalms that you go through before the services. He's reading a hexapsalm. The Psalms that are done before before Matins or Vespers, depending on which one you're doing. But he's reading more so than praying. So on the first night, he does that. She kind of arises, wakes up.
And he draws the sacred circle.
Yeah.
Which I don't really think that's in our tradition, really.
It's not.
It's more of a magic thing.
It is.
It's the magic circle.
Yeah. And I think, and again, that's so that from a theological point of view, it's bang on. Like it's got that. It's showing you that this stuff's weak. It's weak source. You're fighting their battle on their grounds and their terms with their weapons.
But for now, it works.
For the first time, it works.
She can't penetrate it.
Right. So then the cockerel crows. The cockerel crows how many times?
Yeah.
3 times.
Yeah.
Interesting. So like the betrayal of Peter.
Christ.
Yeah, that's right. So the failure of Peter, and again, so this kind of leans back into a little bit on Peter. I always kind of look at Peter in the Gospels as like a bit of a goof off, and he's trying, but he's much like Hamar, much like the philosopher, he's kind of a coarse guy. He's a fisherman, right? He's basically illiterate.
Yeah.
He doesn't know a great deal, but his heart's in the right place. But often you'll hear him when in the Gospels that Christ is really kind of laying into him.
Yeah.
He's being a bit of being a bit of a thickie. And again, I'm not just being horrible to St. Peter, and I've got a great veneration for St. Peter, but this imagery of Peter is really for us, so that even people who are involved with the church, just because you're involved in the church and you're around the orbit of Christ doesn't make you necessarily it doesn't imbibe you with faith. When you compare that, how he speaks to Peter, with how he speaks to the centurion, who says, "Just command me. All I want, just command me. Tell me what you want me to do, and I'll do it. I know how to command people. I tell people what to do, and they do it. I'm telling you, command me, and I'll do it."
Yeah.
And he says, in Israel, I have never known anybody with as much faith as you have.
Because your faith has saved you, said.
And your faith has made you.
I don't need to check it out. I know you've said it.
That's it.
So it's going to be.
That's it.
Yeah. And really, St. Peter is, in a way, like a model for us, because we really, in a way, and all the saints are, but in a very specific way, St. Peter is because it's easy for us to look at Judas and be like, oh, scumbag, betrayed Christ.
Yeah.
But I betray Christ all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that in a flippant or prideful kind of way. I'm saying it in a way that's
realistic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the key is that St. Peter obviously repented.
And compare him in the Gospels to Acts, when he's completely humbled, he's completely humiliated. He realises how much he has goofed off, and completely repents, and the Holy Spirit descends upon him at Pentecost, and how different he is. And then, because you hear all the accounts of him not being able to cast out demons in the Gospels, then goes out and heals people who are dead. He resurrects people through the Holy Spirit. He casts demons out by the Holy Spirit. He's a completely different person.
Yeah.
He's put off the old man and has put on the new. Is the parlance that we use in the Orthodox Church. And so this guy, the philosopher Hamar, doesn't do that. He thinks it's worked. He goes back out. So I think, I'm only here for 3 days. It's easy.
Exactly.
I'm one day down. Just get through it. Bite my teeth down. Bite my lip. Get through it. Pull your bottom lip up and get down. Get through it.
And all the village people want to know, don't they?
Yeah.
They're
What's
like,
happened?
Yeah.
Have you seen something? It's like, yeah, I've seen something, but he won't really say. And so he goes in the second time, and again goes in, draws the circle, lights candles, reads the prayers. And in the translation, so in the subtitles, it says, I'll pray the prayers, but he doesn't use that word. He uses the word chitach in Russian, which is to read. Doesn't use the word molitsa, to pray. So he's reading through the Psalms, and again she wakes up. What happens this time?
The second night, again, she assaults him again, and it's a bit more ramped up.
Yeah.
She's like, the coffin is floating.
Yeah.
She's kind of surfing the coffin.
Yeah.
She's banging against the sacred circle, and she still can't get in. And I think it's the second night when he opens the prayer book and the birds fly out.
That's right.
So this animal presence seems to be there. I'm not really sure what that could mean. Maybe
Well, this church is kind of
it's run down.
It's ramshackle.
It doesn't look like it's in use, really.
Doesn't. No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Yeah.
And he's trying to kind of do it, but again, he's kind of having a go at it. Is he really doing it? You know, it doesn't feel like a sanctified place. It feels.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I think the fact that the evil is allowed a presence in the church speaks to the fact that maybe it's desacralized, or maybe God he's running this trial for Chomala, that he's suspended his kind of protection.
Right. And and again, from a theological point of view, is absolutely bang on. You know, the grace of God departs for a while, so that we can. This again, this is something that I've come up with my priest, so that we can be led from glory to glory. So that
Exactly. And by the way, that happens all the time biblically.
Yeah.
In the Old Testament.
Yeah, exactly. You know, being cast into the desert. and others, you know, that it's not about just there is no such thing as I've made it. There is no it doesn't work like that. So he goes in again. He reads the prayers. It's more intense, but she still can't penetrate the circle. And again, the cockle crows. Again, he wakes up, you know, he thinks, that's another one down, you know, goes and gets some food, gets something to drink.
And he gets the kid to play the flute while he dances. He's like a hopak kind of thing.
That's it, yeah.
And he's becoming a bit of like a holy fool.
Right. And I always kind of thought, well, because he keeps saying,
Is it Eurodivny?
Yes, yeah, that's right.
That's holy fool.
Holy fool.
Fool for Christ.
Fool for Christ. And and interestingly, he's because I always kind of looked at it and thought like they're turning into the like Russian hard bass of the time. Like, starts dancing about, but again, it's quite sort of carnal. It's quite you know, he's kind of seen as a bit of a knees up. Like, then again, he thinks he's made it,
and he actually tries to escape.
He does
on this in this day,
because you know he suspects, I think, that on the third time it's going to be even worse, and he only just scraped it, and it is, and he only just scraped it on the second night. So there's doubt within his, you know, he isn't a rock star. Unlike Merrin, you compare him to Merrin, who turns up and he's like,
we're going to do it.
We're doing it.
Yeah.
This is going to cost me my life. I know this is going to cost me my life. I suspect that I'm not walking out of this, but I'm going to do it. I've done this before. I know this thing. I know what this thing is. I know what the doctrine is. We're going to war. This guy's not going to war. This guy wants a payday.
Yeah.
And on day 3, he goes into the church, he draws the circle, he reads the prayers, and then what?
Well, you know, what I got from the third night is that by the third night, he is actually praying further.
He's starting to pray harder.
It's just like flowing out of his mouth.
Yeah.
And you can see, and you know what? These like no-name actors are just nailing it.
They are, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the village people, they're completely believable.
They are, yeah.
And he's doing. Forgive me, didn't learn the guy's name, but he's doing an excellent job. He's like, it's the prayer is flowing out of him. He's saying it from his heart. Finally, it's coming out of him.
Yeah.
But it's too little, too late.
It is, and he's still kind of playing around with things because he thinks that the circle is going to save him. He's reading the prayers. He gets through 3 of the psalms, I think it is, or a couple of the psalms, and she wakes again. This time, like, S gets real, right?
Yeah.
And things are starting to crawl out of the walls.
Yeah, she's like, I'm going to summon every hellspawn against you.
Right. And at this point, he has a choice to make, and the choice is either it's humiliation, and I know I've goofed off, and I can repent, and I've gone wrong, but I'm gonna put all my faith in God, and I'm gonna get rid of this thing. He doesn't really do that. He doesn't really do that. He still thinks he's safe within this circle that he's drawn with his hand on the floor.
And by the way, that actor drew a friggin' brilliant
pretty good.
geometric circle.
It's pretty good.
I can't draw a circle like that.
And he'd had a drink, right?
Yeah.
He'd been on Pacini. He'd been on some Samagon and had been really at it. She still can't. So for all these kind of creatures come out, and it's like it kind of, for me, it was very Lovecraftian. You kind of got all these demons that were summoned. You got all these. It was a bit like kind of Midian and the Nightbreed stuff. It reminded me a lot of the Nightbreed stuff. So you got all these kind of things that were crawling around, all these skeletons. And
the effects, we were saying, were great.
For 67, unbelievable. Yeah. For that time, were just outstanding.
And there's a way in which the kind of goofiness actually lent to the weirdness.
It did,
in a good way. In a good way.
It did, yeah.
Like the skeleton kind of like really like jankily kind of moving, and all the little goblins crawling out, and the way that the hands are coming out of the cross,
and you can see like kind of like the CGI, like modern CGI, and it dates really badly. This has aged really well. You know, it's obviously it's of its time, and there are limitations, but it's aged really well, and it looks very, very good. And she still can't penetrate the circle. No. But she's got one more trick to play. Yeah. And this is where, so again, we were talking about the lack of exposition of the main antagonist. Only at the very, because I'm thinking, well, what V isn't a word that I know particularly well in Russian. Didn't know it at all. And so she summons this thing, this V creature, this demonic entity. Which V I kind of took to be as like it's in vidit, so vidit is into see. She can't see into this circle, so she summons this thing that's got like these flaps over its eyes. It reminds me a bit of sort of Pan's Labyrinth kind of thing. Where like the eyes open up through these flaps on its head.
And all the demons are scared of him.
They are, yeah.
He's the big daddy.
Yeah. And he can see into him. And the minute this thing sees into him, they just pile in.
Yeah, and he actually says, the V says, it's this like stocky kind of demon that's got these like big floppy eyelids, and he says, you know, lift my eyelids so I can see this. Yeah. And Cloma is like, just don't look at him.
Don't look at him. Yeah.
That's going to be the end of me if I look at him.
Yeah.
But he can't not look.
Yeah.
And he looks.
Yeah.
And that is the end of him.
Because he didn't turn his eyes to the floor.
Yeah.
If he turned his eyes to the floor, if he was properly praying, prostrations. Again, like Merrin warns Karas, don't speak to it. Yeah. Don't engage with it. Focus on your doctrine. Focus on the rubrics. Focus on the service. You can't do it.
And just as an aside, if we take every sin that we do, every action that we do that misses the mark, it begins as a thought.
Yeah.
Like a little seed in the psyche.
That's it.
And you can choose to water the seed, or you can choose to ask Christ to pluck it out and throw it away. Yeah. So we're always complicit in that. We look at the demon, and we invite it in.
Engage.
And that's the whole thing about why you have to invite vampires in.
Yeah, that's it.
Vampires can't enter a house unless you give it the invitation.
That's it. So I think it was,
and that's what it means.
Right. Great shout. I think it was St. Paisios that said that sins are like they're like planes. They're like aeroplanes flying over.
Yeah.
And that we just shouldn't allow them to land.
Yeah, don't get
the sticks out, right? The glow sticks, right? Just let them go. Let them go. You'll hear them, you'll see them. You know, just let it go.
Yeah, it's Die Hard 1.
Die Hard 1. Yeah, that's it. Don't engage. Just don't engage with it. Don't look at it. He can't do that, and so he gets royally messed up.
Yeah.
He gets the birch treatment from these demons.
Takes his life.
Right. But he doesn't. There's no kind of a happy ending. Like there isn't. It isn't kind of really. It's not a particularly happy ending. unlike with The Exorcist, it's like she's kind of through it as Reagan, and they kind of move on. It's kind of left a little bit hanging open that this thing's going to kind of go. It could go around and kind of reinfest other people, but it's much more positive. With this, it's like the abbot comes and sees him lying on the floor.
Yeah, and interestingly, the beautiful Panuchka has reverted to the hag.
To the hag, yeah, that's it.
I'm not sure what that meant.
No, and I wondered if it was that. Was it that only the abbot can really see? What are we seeing that from the abbot's point of view? It's an interesting point. Yeah, that's interesting. I've not really kind of considered that, but yeah, she just kind of reverts back to think, and again, it's a bit like Shining. The girl in the woman in the bathroom. And again, that comes from folklore. There's a lot of things. Sirens.
Rusalki. I think what that is a commentary on is how, particularly men,
put on a pedestal.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, we can be drawn into, let's say, a carnal situation, but then when we've consummated that carnal situation, we immediately see it for it, and we're like, ooh,
why did I do that?
Why did I do that? Yeah.
When the beer goggles have come off, that kind of carry on. So, and then the final sort of scene is where two young novices are then discussing the story about the philosopher.
Yes.
And that they're then sort of shown it's perpetuated. Like the next two guys are kind of goofing around.
Yeah.
And then the abbot comes along and said, "What are you doing?
Working.
What are you doing? We're working."
They're supposed to be paying iconography, aren't they?
Right.
But what one of the guys says is, what a load of BS.
Yeah.
All you have to do is cross yourself.
That's
and,
it.
And it would turn tail.
Right.
And maybe he's right.
Yeah.
Maybe he's right.
Maybe
that's all you do need to do.
If the faith is strong.
If you have the faith.
If the faith is strong.
Because there's parts in the gospel where the apostles are like, Jesus, we can't cast out these demons. It's like, because you don't have the
faith.
Yeah,
exactly. I read the passage I read tonight for my little girl was about Peter walking on the water.
Exactly.
In an example of where Peter actually does something really good.
He does do it.
He does good. He says to Christ, when he realises, to start with, he sees him as this a phantom. They're terrified of Christ. They see him walking on the water, and they're in the boat and it's choppy, and he realises it's Christ, and he says, Christ says to him, "I am Yahweh. I am. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid." And so look at me. And Peter says to him, I want to walk to you. And he says, "Come, do it. And he does it. And it's only when he looks down at the water and he's afraid of the wind and the waves that he realised that he sort of snaps out of his sort of faithfulness and then starts to drown. But then what does he do? He says, "Christ, save me, pull me out," and he does. So it's like the last thing that he could have done, that Kamar could have done, he doesn't do.
No,
he doesn't do. He doesn't at any point say, "I can't do this. Christ, you've got to do it for me." He doesn't say that. He tries to do it himself. Tries to draw a circle. Circle fails. But the rector, the archimandrite, he's kind of got his eyes over the shoulder of these two young lads, and he's trying to kind of keep them on the straight and narrow. But interestingly, this is all about work. Working in a monastery is a spiritual obedience. Everything's to do with spirituality. So it's about learning the faith. It's
like a wax on, wax off kind of
kind of is. It kind of is. Yeah, I was just thinking that. It's like in a Pat Morita style, right?
Yeah.
It's like, maybe it
did not talk like that.
Yeah. Maybe the exorcism was like the friends that we made on the way. But these two lads are now like the next in line. Like what's going to be the example of what's going to be the story of these two lads. Amazing film. Really, really, really beautiful to watch. Like really faithfully shot. I thought for a Soviet era film, it was very gentle with the Orthodox Church.
Yeah. Slightly irreverent, but not too disrespectful.
Yeah.
And by the way, just as an aside, it's free to watch on YouTube.
We can drop a link on, can't we?
Yeah, we can drop a link. But if you look for MOS Film, MOS Film, it's on there, and that seems to be some kind of like distribution kind of entity.
Yeah.
If you go on their channel, they've got a lot of Russian films that you can watch, including Sergei Eisenstein's Ivan the Great.
Oh, it's great. It's great.
So you can watch it online, and I was peripherally aware of it. I knew that the film existed, but what kind of reminded me of it was that Kino Corner, a channel on YouTube, Kino Corner, did a video on it, and he's a great channel, by the way, so check out Kino Corner if you're into films.
And the Orthodox Church that they're showing that is just amazing.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah,
They really do show that justice.
Yeah, they do. So yeah, another great film, and two films that are kind of similar in concept, but different in execution. But yeah, like you said, they do. Both the films kind of hint to this cyclical nature that we're kind of led to believe that it's all going to happen again.
Yeah, but the battle's ongoing.
Yeah,
it's not an event. It's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
But an interesting kind of like the way that because there's not really many years. I think it's maybe 4 years, 5 years maybe between the two films. So it's kind of like the mirror, if you like, of how the East would have viewed this topic of demonic entities and how they tackle it, like spiritual warfare.
Yeah. So right, we've been talking a lot.
We have
nearly 2 hours.
Yeah, it's a good one. Well, it's 2 films to review.
Yeah.
So hopefully kept a few people going. But yeah, that kind of sums us up for Halloween and Spooktober.
Yeah.
2024.
So in a couple of days, I'm going to take the kids to Alton Towers. We're going to do the whole Halloween shtick over there. That'll be great. And then I'm off to Corfu for a week.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so that hopefully that'll be a nice kind of relaxing week, and then I'll come back and I'll take
back into smoke.
Yeah, exactly.
Back into smoke. Drink to drink.
I'm hoping to pick up some good duty free.
Yeah.
On the way or on the way back.
Well, they were very good for sticks when I was out there in Cyprus. They were very well priced. The almafuertes at a really good price.
So it's kind of like an elephant in the room, because I'm going on holiday with my dad as well as the kids, and Dad officially doesn't know that he's always hated smoking. Officially, he doesn't know that I smoke, but I know that he does know that I smoke. And the other day he was because it was last Father's Day. I got Dad gift certificates for him and his missus to go to a tasting of their choosing.
Yeah.
And he got talking to me about Mitchell's, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I've got a friend who gets the cigars from there." I was like, "Oh, interesting topic to bring up." So I wonder if I can get my dad drunk enough to
get a stick down.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Soften break the walls down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Good. Well, I think that pretty much ties us up. So we'll thanks for everybody for joining in. Good to see some guys on the chats. That's nice.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
And so hopefully we'll be back on it when you're back from Corfu.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
We'll get back to it. Right. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
And enjoy your Spooktober, and God bless.
God bless.
Right.
So just click.